bienvenidos. My name is Camile Acosta and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. I am a graduate student with the Folk Studies program and I am really excited to be celebrating the Latinx culture this month. Welcome to the kitchen. Today we will be making a Mexican-American staple in my household, and that is chile con queso. So you have a spicy chile, you have a delicious cheese. You're gonna mix it all up. It's gonna be super easy and super delicious. So the one thing that I recommend you have is either a cast iron pan or a comal. And a comal is basically like a cast iron pan, but it's more flat, I would say, so that you're able to roast your chiles on it, okay? So the chiles that I use, and you can totally use whatever chiles you so please. I use poblano peppers. They're the big green ones like this. I also use some jalapeno peppers, small but a little thick. And I also use some serrano peppers. Now, according to like the heat scale, serranos are the hottest in this mix. Jalapenos are a little mild. Poblanos, there's not that much heat depending on the batch that you pick. So, all we're gonna do, now be very careful because this is about medium-high heat, so be very, very careful with your fingers. Now, I know my grandma, she could literally like put her hand on it and be completely fine when she's, flipping her tortillas, but please, don't do that unless you are an experienced abuela, okay? So I want you to be very careful. You can use tongs as well if you feel more safe. So I'm gonna take some of my peppers, easily spread them around, okay? You're gonna hear some sizzling, you're gonna hear some popping. Be careful, okay? But you will be completely fine, I promise. Okay, I'm gonna put 3 poblanos right there. I'm gonna put about 3 jalapenos, okay? And then I am just going to put 1 serrano pepper right there, okay? Now, all you're going to do is wait a couple of minutes, okay? Now, you'll know that they're starting to get black and burnt when you hear the popping start to increase, okay? So when that starts happening, you're gonna flip them on each side to make sure that every single part of that pepper is nice and beautiful and charred. Okay, so let's give it a couple minutes and we'll come right back. Alrighty, so it's been a couple of minutes and we had the peppers steaming in the bag, and I went ahead and took them out, put the bag aside, and we have 3 poblanos here. We have 2 jalapenos, 1 serrano, okay? We also have 1/2 of an onion, 2 tomatoes here, and I'm gonna use 3 pieces of garlic, okay? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna blend all of this wonderful stuff together. Before I get to that, we're gonna go ahead and get our cheese ready, okay? Now, you can use a pot on a stove. My tia Carmen, she's the originator of this chile con queso. She loves making it on the stove. However, sometimes if you don't have time or if you need to take it to a big party, a crock pot will work just as well, okay? So now, I'm gonna put it on high heat, yeah? And what you're going to need is Velveeta cheese. Now, this is the most American cheese like in the world, and you're probably like, what? Like, aren't you gonna use like Queso Oaxaca or something like that? You totally can. It's gonna taste just as amazing. But you know what? This cheese can be pretty cheap, just a cheddar cheese, and you can just drop it on in there and it tastes just as good, I promise you. And it's nice and soft and it can keep. So we're just gonna unravel that, just like that, cut in half. I'm gonna plop it right in here. Super simple. Now I like to use both halves. It depends on you. If you really like your queso to be super, super cheesy, I would recommend using the entire Velveeta. Perfect. Now, just let that sit in there. The next thing that you're going to need to pour in here is a can of sweetened condensed milk, or sometimes some people call it Pet's milk. Now, this is going to add not only a nice velvety texture to your chile con queso, but it's also going to lessen the heat. Just in case some of the peppers we took are a little too spicy, this is a great trick to use. So you're just gonna pour that nice thick right in there. Get all of that good stuff right on out. Perfect. Now, this is another trick I use. Depending on if maybe the chile is too hot, you never know. It also gives a nice sweet, tangy texture. I use a little bit of tomato sauce. This is about 15 ounces. I'll use about half of this, okay? So you're just gonna pour that right in there. And again, you can add more or less depending on what you like, okay? Now, we're gonna go ahead, let it do its thing. We will be using a regular milk later depending on the thickness of where we're at so far. That's basically just something to eyeball to see how thick we want our queso or how liquidy we want our queso. My great uncle Nano, he loves a very, very almost like water-like texture of queso because you can drizzle it on anything that you want and it tastes great. I like mine a little bit more thick, so I won't use as much milk. But when we get to that, I'll show you how much I use. So all you're gonna do, let that sit for a while we prepare our salsa that goes within the queso, okay? So all we're going to do, I have a blender right here. Now, I'm going to put half of an onion, yellow, white, completely up to you, right there. Also, this is very important. I do not have this plugged in right now or anything like that because you just want to be completely safe. So when you're putting everything in, make sure it's unplugged or at least removed from the blender itself. I'm also going to add my half tomatoes. I use Roma. They're cheap and they taste really, really wonderful, but you can use whatever tomato that suits your fancy. Now, I love garlic, and in my household, we all love garlic. So if you don't like garlic too much, I would assume maybe like 1 little bowl, but I like using 3. And again, you can totally make this your own. Now, let's get to the peppers. So the poblanos, like I mentioned before, typically are not that hot, but you can always do like a trial and error kind of thing. Put 1 poblano in, taste it, see if you like it. If you can do a little bit more heat, start adding more peppers. It's just completely up to you, okay? I really like spice, so I'm going to use all 3 poblano peppers no matter what. Now, all I do is I cut off the front half of the pepper. And you're gonna see that there is so many seeds in here. Personally, I love the seeds. And the seeds, as many of you know, contain a lot of the heat. So if you're really like, no, I don't want any spice whatsoever, go ahead. And all you're going to do is take this little part. You're going to twist. And then, boom, you're going to take all of these seeds out just like that. Completely up to you. Again, I don't mind them too much. But just to be safe, I'll take them out, okay? You're going to cut it. The blender's going to do the rest of the work. Just gonna plop it right on in there, just like that, okay? So let's go ahead and do the same. Again, boom, boom, boom. Take the stem out, if you'd like, just like so. Cut it up, just like that, okay? One more time, do a little twist. Perfect. Right in here, okay? Now, with the jalapenos, it gets a little tricky. Some jalapenos are super sweet, like you'd be completely surprised. Other times though, they're fiery and the spiciest thing you've ever put in your mouth. So I would really, really be careful with these, okay? Now, I personally am gonna go ahead and put 1 whole jalapeno. I will cut it up, seeds and everything, right in here, okay? Now, to test it out, I'm gonna go ahead and take the seeds out of this one, just to be safe. Now, this is super simple. You just have to be really careful, okay? So I cut this jalapeno in half, as you can see, and you can take a spoon or a fork. I'm gonna do my best to use a knife right now, okay? All you're gonna do, be careful, is you're gonna cut right in the center, like this on the side, and then on the other side, just like that. And boom, there they go. All of the seeds, all of the spice completely gone. Let's do that again. So all you're gonna do, cut a little triangle, boom, another little triangle, boom, and there they go. Now, always remember, when you're dealing with any kind of peppers that you are de-seeding or taking off the skin, the spice itself stays on your fingers for a very long time. So please remember to wash your hands vigorously before and after. And also just be very aware not to touch your eyes, maybe for a couple of hours after you've made your chile, okay? Now, serrano is almost always spicy. I can almost always guarantee it. Because I'm making a queso and not a salsa right now, I'm gonna go ahead and put the whole thing in there because the cheese is definitely gonna dilute all of that spice, yeah? So we're gonna drop that right on in, okay? Now, what I like to do is add just a little bit of water because that's gonna help the blending process because there's a lot of thickness in here. There's some seeds, there's some skin, there's some pulp. So a nice little bit of water is gonna help go a long way, okay? Just a little bit, I would say. Eyeball it, see what works best for you. Now, because I already have an inkling that this might be a little spicy, my little trick is some salt. Now, personally, I love garlic salt because it has a little bit of sugar in it. And as we know, sugar sometimes cuts out the heat for you. So I'm gonna put just a little bit here. Also remember, depending on the types of tostadas, the chips that you use, those could be really salty too. So just be careful, eyeball it, see whatever suits you best. Just a little bit right here. Perfect. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to blend this up and then I'll be right back. Alrighty, so what we just did is we blended everything that you saw in this blender right up, and we got this kind of liquidy consistency, right? Now again, this will change depending on how much water you choose to use and how juicy your peppers are, right? So we have a beautiful light green color and it smells really fragrant. It smells like garlic and peppers, and that's exactly what you want, okay? So you're gonna go over to your crock pot or your stovetop, whatever you use. And as you can see, even though we're on high heat, the cheese is taking a while to melt, okay? So the more liquid, the better. Now, be very careful because you don't want it to plop and hit you in the face. You're gonna slowly just pour this right in, okay? Just like so. Cover all the cheese. There you go. Now I'm gonna use my spoon. Just gonna go ahead, scoop all that goodness out because we don't want to waste food in this house, okay? Like so. Perfect. Now, it's probably going to take, I want to say a good 5-10 minutes, depending on how fast your crock pot or the stovetop heats up. All you're going to do, be very careful, okay? Don't put your hands here. Put it on the side. You're going to mix this up, okay? Now, as you can see, it's really chunky. That's completely okay. I promise you, the cheese is going to melt right up. Now, remember I mentioned, if you really, really, really want your queso to get nice and creamy, you're gonna add some cold milk. You can use whatever milk you so choose. Personally, I have never tried like soy milk or oat milk or rice milk. I would not be surprised though if it tastes just as amazing. Personally, in our house though, we love using whole milk. So you're just gonna open this up, eyeball it, okay? Because you can always add more later. There we go. Woo. Now we're gonna smash it a little bit. Be very careful. And you're gonna mix, and you're gonna mix, and you're gonna mix. Now, this chile con queso is usually a side dish in my house, but I promise you that it is at every single get-together we've ever had in our entire lives. If it's a birthday, let's bring some chile con queso. If it's Christmas, let's bring some chile con queso. If it's a baptism, let's bring some chile con queso. And I promise you it works with every single meal that you have. It goes great with, obviously, tostada chips. You can also put it on cheeseburgers, amazing. Tacos, flautas, incredible. You can also slap it on a steak and like make like a chile steak, tapequeño steak. It's absolutely wonderful. It's also really fantastic on eggs in the morning as well. Very, very versatile. And you can get very, very full off of it because you'll keep coming back. So be patient. After you break up the cheese as much as you possibly can, me personally, I'm gonna add a little bit more milk. Just like so. Break it up a little bit more. Perfect. Great. Now we're just gonna let the heat do its thing, okay? So we're gonna come back and check in about 3 minutes. Alrighty, so now it's been about 20 to 30 minutes that we've had this crock pot on at about high heat. And as you can come see, everything is really starting to melt together. You have the cheese, you have the pieces of pepper and tomato in there. And this is exactly the texture that you want, all right? Now, it's a nice thick texture. You can kind of see the chunks of cheese in there. Now, if you're really impatient like I am, it's in a good place because as the crock pot continues to heat, it'll keep melting that cheese, binding everything together. Now, the last thing we need to do is taste it. So, let's give it a taste. Again, I like eating this with tostadas, like at nachos or something like that. But again, this tastes great on flautas, on tacos, on eggs, however you so choose. All right, so I'm just gonna give it a nice dip. Yeah, it's very hot, okay, so be careful. Perfect. Again, thank you so much for joining me today and a little taste of my Mexican heritage. And I hope that you have a wonderful Hispanic Heritage Month. And thank you so much.